I'm super nervous right now.
Why are you nervous?
Because I've never been on the radio. And, people are listening.
You mean NSR?
NSR.
National Scrubs Radio?
Bro, it's the coolest radio station I've ever heard of. National Scrubs Radio, it screams me.
You are listening to NSR, National Scrubs Radio, where nurses, doctors, students, and other healthcare professionals bring you stories from scrubs across the nation. Tune in today with NSR's Derek J.
How does it scream you?
Well, because, I wear scrubs nationally because I'm a travel nurse, right? So, yeah, see? And I listen to the radio.
People are scratching their head right now who is this guy?
They're like, this dude sounds real hillbilly to be on the radio, right? But this is Shane Ritchie. I'm from southeastern Kentucky, born and raised. And I'm sitting here with my buddy Derek on this podcast for National Scrubs Radio, and I really dig that name, man. It just screams.
Yeah, dude. I'm actually really happy to have you here today. And you were talking about some crazy stories about your friend. I don't want to call his name out.
Okay,
but how you got him into nursing and stuff.
Well, I can tell you the story. It's my buddy Drew. We went to nursing school together in West Virginia, and after we got out of school, we went to work. And you know what? That's a story. That's another story.
Oh, okay.
So what happened was, after I started travel nursing, I landed a job down in the Delta in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and
Mississippi, man.
Yes,
frog legs down there,
dude, all over. It's the first time I'd ever had
You are Southern.
I am Southern.
You definitely Southern.
And I've had frog legs and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's the first time I had boiled peanuts. Some of the best barbecue I've ever had in my life came from Clarksdale, which is actually where the Crossroads is. That's where, what is his name? This podcast would be way better if I could remember his name. Anyway, he sold his soul to the devil to be able to play the blues right there at the Crossroads. And a lot of people understand where that is because of the Crossroads.
Got it.
So, but anyway, that was our first gig. And towards the end of that, I was talking with a travel nursing agency, and they almost guaranteed us a spot in North Carolina. And so we applied. We got the license. I called my buddy Drew up and said, look, man, it's time for you to leave this level 1 trauma center in West Virginia.
You're super stoked. You're ready for this new era in your career.
Yes.
Hey, let's hit the road. Let's get out of the state. Let's see something different, new, and everything else. And then
what happens is we all three do it. Me and my wife Heather and my buddy Drew. We all just kind of say, okay. He quits his job. We apply for the license, and the recruiter we're talking to says, hey, it's a guarantee. Don't worry about it. There's been a little bit of a delay. That delay became 2 weeks. That 2 weeks became 3 months. And now me and Drew are unemployed. My wife gets a gig in Petersburg, West Virginia. And Drew's like, bro, I'm unemployed. I've got no work. I've got this. I've got that. And
he's stressing.
So, he's tripping. He's like, I can't believe you got me to quit my job. And then
he's living off frog legs right now.
Yeah, he's living off frog legs. And so then the agency calls me up, and they're just like, hey, we got this gig for you, same place your wife works in Petersburg. And I'm like, look, we can't do this. My buddy Drew has been unemployed for 3 months. He quit his job, yada, yada, yada. So I kind of threw him out there. They offered him the job. He calls me the same night, and he's like, look, bro, I just got offered a job. They love my experience. They love everything. And I never told him that I was the reason why it kind of landed that gig. And thankfully so, because, we had an income coming in, and he'd been unemployed. And I kind of felt responsible because I promised him. Based on what the agency was saying.
This is your boy.
You
got to take care of your friends, right?
Right. And so he gets the gig, he starts working, and he never looks back. He's been travel nursing ever since.
That's awesome, man.
He was so mad at me for that 3 months.
But that was the catalyst that was needed in order for him to spark this new era in his life.
Yes.
And really explore. I mean, I feel like that's what a lot of people need. I feel like a lot of nurses who get in a routine, they need something that scares the living, out of them practically, just for them to oh, you know what? I need to do something completely different. I mean, that's what happened to me. I mean, honestly, I was scared to travel cross country. I didn't even have my license yet when I got my first job. They had a walkthrough license where I drove across, I think it was 2,000 miles across country applied for my license, got it 3 days later, and guess what? I was working the following week
That's awesome.
in that state. But yeah, you know what? It's almost like living on a prayer, Bon Jovi. You know, it's like you have to take that leap, man.
It's nerve-wracking.
It is nerve-wracking.
There's so much paperwork involved in travel nursing, which we'll get into a little later.
Yeah.
But it's a much better way, I think, to see the world.
Yeah.
And to care for people from different cultures and diversities. You know
Absolutely.
What I
Because
mean?
West Virginia.
Well, West Virginia,
You're in California.
Right.
And you come from West Virginia. Come on. I mean, you can't be more opposite, dude. I mean, honestly, that's like like, for instance, you have a lot of people in California that eat the strangest meals sometimes, you know. They'll eat the, I can't even describe some of the meal cuisine here. It's great. It's some of the best food in the U.S., right?
Ever.
But then they'll say, frog legs? I don't want to eat frog legs.
I know.
What I mean? And they look down upon that, but yet they're willing to eat anything else.
Anything else. Doesn't matter. Because, you know, there's so many different cultures here in California that, and the foods are coming in from different countries, and where we're at, it's like,
it's a food mecca, man. It
so
really is.
Yeah. So wait, you just eat what you find?
Yeah,
that's not necessarily the case, right? But you know, frog legs are good.
I'm sure in 10 years there's gonna be some gourmet restaurant, like some Michelin star. It's gonna serve like frog legs over.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Dude,
but here's the thing.
But you're gonna be like, I'm spending $100 a plate for this, you know?
Right. It's like, you know, you're gonna pay about $8 a frog leg, right? And there's not very much meat there, but hey. It's gourmet.
It's gourmet, and it's in California,
and
it's not in Mississippi.
That's right. I mean? It's not West Virginia frog anymore.
Right.
This is a cultured frog.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? As if it changed the meat.
Right.
But anyway. So yeah, you know, we got him into travel nursing, and now I tell you what, I actually envy him in some ways, simply because he's doing what our idea for travel nursing was. He is going places that interest him. He's going places that fit his hobby and his lifestyle. But he's young, he's single, you know, and he's just on the road.
Man.
Just got a kind of a perfect setup. You know, he just spent 3 months in Florida boar hunting. He's heading to Alaska next for
He's definitely from West Virginia if he's going for
I know,
boar.
right?
Yeah, he's definitely from the South, man.
Well, he spent 6 months in Denver, Colorado. He was out there, and I'll tell you what, one of his first, and I know this now this podcast is about my buddy Drew, right? So anyway, he goes into this job, meets this farmer, and makes a deal with him.
Yeah.
He says, hey, I'll come and I'll work on your farm if you just let me hunt pheasant. Right? So this dude literally, and I told him, I said, Drew, how many people can say they took a travel nursing contract
just to hunt pheasant, man,
and you bartered with a local to work the land to hunt for food? Like, are you serious? Like, this is Wild West kind of stuff, right? You don't get this. I'm bartering money. Like, where am I going for how much money, and how cool is the area? You're like, what can I hunt? And what kind of work can I do to get there?
And this just shows you the wide spectrum of why people do nursing.
Yes.
Right? I mean, travel nursing gives you a lot of options if you want to have your separate lifestyle outside the hospital where you can explore. But, I mean, I know people that do it in Hawaii because they want to go either scuba diving or they want to go they love the beach scene, right? But your boy just want to do pheasant.
He just wants to hunt. He wants to fish, and that's it.
That's it. It sounds like almost like Alaska would be a perfect place for him. Has he traveled to Alaska?
He just applied. He's going to Alaska now, and he's going to be salmon fishing. He's like, bro, you got to come out for at least a couple weeks to hang out. We'll climb some glaciers, do some salmon fishing.
Right.
So my wife and I, we're going to plan to go out just to kind of hang out. You know
that's
what I mean?
Cool, man.
So it'll be
really
fun.
Cool.
And you know, you have that flexibility with travel nursing. You know what I mean? Because you kind of write your own schedule. So back to the beginning. That was just a little bit about Drew, you know. To kind of.
So you talked about Drew. We kind of explored that avenue about you took care of your boy.
Yep.
He has a career.
He does.
He's traveling. Hey, shout out to your boy
Drew Ware.
There you go. There you go, man. And then how did you get into nursing? What was the catalyst that made you get into nursing?
Well, I'll
yourself,
tell you.
Not Drew. We're done with that.
Yes, we're done. Drew, you're out, bud.
Sorry, man.
Sorry about that. But so I'm going to go all the way back to my childhood, if that's okay.
Yeah. You tell me where to start.
You got it, brother.
I got it, man. Come on.
All right, man. So when I was little,
I got tissues here for you in case you need you.
No,
I feel like it's like Barbara Walters right now. I'm not,
well, and today, guys, we're talking about Shane Ritchie.
Yes.
So I come from a small town in eastern Kentucky. Jackson, Kentucky is the name of it. It's in Breathitt County. It's got a lot of history there, good and bad. But there's a lot of poverty that's still in that region even today.
Wow. Okay.
So and people probably nail me for this, but there are a lot of places in America that are just as poor now as third world countries are.
Yeah.
And we don't really realize that. So when you come from a place like that, you're always comparing things to that. You know what I mean? Like whether it's the money you make, the foods you eat, the education you receive, the people you meet, the cultures you indulge in, you always refer back to your roots, right? And so when I grew up, my father was a coal truck driver.
Okay.
So he worked with a limited education, and my mother, who was from Fort Wayne, Indiana, also had a limited education. I think they both went as far as 8th grade.
Okay.
My dad started driving a coal truck at the age of 15 or 16. And that was way before
Coal truck, right?
Coal truck, yes.
It sounds like a West Virginia man.
I know, right? This is in Kentucky.
Kentucky, okay.
Yes.
Well, Kentucky is definitely a coal state,
It
too.
is.
Yeah,
huge,
it's huge
coal state.
So, actually, when coal comes to mind, I think Kentucky, West Virginia.
Right.
Really, those are the two states that come to mind.
That's true. That's
true.
But
anyways.
So he starts driving at a very young age. There's a lot of things I can tell you about what happened to him, but we'll focus on this for now. Maybe that'll be a story for another time.
Sure,
kind of where we came from. But anyway, so he started at that age. He met my mother at I think he was 21.
That's pretty old for Kentucky, man.
Listen to these jokes. I love it.
Hey, man, my parents met. Hey, listen, my mom was 18. My dad was 16.
My mom was 16.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was 21. Sorry, guys. Hope that's not throwing anyone under the bus.
I think that's so legal in
It
Kentucky.
is completely legal, right? 16 is the age of consent. Not that I'm allowing.
It's a lot different nowadays than
right,
it was back in the day.
I wouldn't allow my 16-year-old daughter, who I don't have yet to date, nor would I allow my. I mean,
it's
my
a different
little
world,
sister
man.
couldn't
It's a different
date.
world.
Yes, it is. But So anyway,
yes.
he drove the truck. He made a pretty good living at that time. This was back in the I don't even know what decade now, right? But I know in the 80s and the 90s the money was really good. So he meets my mom, who fell in love. They kind of moved to Kentucky. It was a very hard life for them. She ended up being a waitress for much of our life growing up, and we lived in several different places across the way. We lived in so many places, for instance, that we don't even have addresses. We refer to them as the red house or the green house or the white and blue house on Main
Street.
Street.
They're landmarks.
Yes, they're landmarks.
Right.
Where do you get your mail?
It says red house.
Yeah, it says, the red house at the end of the street.
Richie resident.
Yeah, you'll know there's 7 of them living in a 4-room house.
Richie
but
red
it's okay.
house, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, it was the best childhood. Some of the fondest memories come from my childhood, and knowing who I am is a product of that kind of raising. And we were always raised to have morals and values and ethics, which bleeds into nursing, right? Because it's a huge field where you're dealing with so many different cultures that you almost have to be in tune with your own ethics and morals and values in order to appreciate theirs.
I really think that you have to know yourself.
You do.
Before you take care of others.
You truly do.
I really do. I think that makes you a better, not even a nurse, like whatever.
Just a healthcare provider.
Healthcare provider. I mean, this show is definitely dedicated to people in scrubs, but I mean, like any kind of service industry.
Agree.
Taking care of others, you have to know yourself because it gives you a perception. Anyways.
No. 100% agree. And so with that upbringing, it's the Bible Belt, right? West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, all that's part of the Bible Belt, they call it.
Okay.
And regardless of your religious point of view, most people's morals and values, that fiber, right, of their being will come from some sort of belief system.
Got it.
Right? If you believe in nothing, then you fear nothing.
Right.
Right? In most cases. So we were raised with a really strong belief, which is good, and I'll get to the reason for that down the road. But we grew up very poor. But one of the places that come to mind is the Red House, and that's why I mentioned it first. It's a place where it was literally 4 rooms in this house, and there were 7 of us, 5 of us kids, me, my brother Travis, Bayless, Arlie, and my little sister April. 1 girl, 4 boys. She had a really rough way to go growing up.
I feel bad.
I know, right?
Is she still here?
Yeah. She's still here, man. We didn't do anything.
Want to make sure,
She. I wish we had some of the old videos. I could play some audio from it. You'd love it. But anyway, So we grew up, like I said, really poor. My dad dealt with horses. He did break them, and it was the coolest thing watching him break these horses. We didn't get a lot of money out of it, but I'm talking like taking a wild horse.
Is that what breaking is?
Yes.
Is making a wild horse more into one
to where you tame it, that you can ride
tame it, ride it.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
And so he would do that, and we grew up around horses and things like that we had on the property, which was super nice. Went to a lot of horse shows, things like that. And my father is probably the most patient man I've ever known in my life, or of every man I've ever met across the way. He's got more patience than any. So I aspire to have that kind of patience, although I don't, but I wish I did. Right. Anyway, so we grew up and we were in this 4-room house, and my brother Travis, being the oldest, got his half bed behind the coal stove. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That was his room. And the rest of us, there were 3 full-size beds in the 1 bedroom in this house. And my parents had one, and me and my brothers had the other. My little sister had one. And the kitchen had dirt floors. We had, well water that we had to draw. Just my mom would draw this water up, boil it, and pour it into.
This is crazy.
I know,
man.
I promise, right?
What century is this?
This is the 80s, bro, and no one should have been that poor.
1880?
1980.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, man. Yeah.
So, and I'm serious, and sorry, I hit your mic.
It's all right.
I tell people this all the time. Like, if you really think about it, because I've been out in California now for 2 years. And so I want to be careful what I say here, but the culture here and the idea of what America is much different than what the reality of what America is.
Right.
And I say that because people in California and other areas of the world, travel nursing, you make a little more money, you have a little more opportunity when it comes to industry and academics than you do in the Appalachian region for whatever reason, whether the money's not given to the Appalachian region or it's not.
It's a totally different world.
It is.
It's a totally different world, right?
Completely different.
So it's hard to grab that perspective unless you're actually living in that world.
It is.
Would you agree?
I agree 100%, and that's the reason for your shock factor when you hear drawing water to boil, to pour into. Wait for it. A 50-gallon barrel, which is what we took baths in. And when the rings actually rusted out of this thing, right, my dad went and he bought a kiddie pool, which was 18 inches deep, and that became our bathtub. I know it sounds crazy, right? And you're thinking, whoa, in the 80s, there's no reason anyone should have lived like that. We didn't have running water in the house, and like it was just we were poor. But here's the thing.
You were happy, though.
We were happy.
That's it, man.
We went to church. The family was together. Every Friday night when my dad got paid, he would come home and he would have all these VHS tapes stacked up, right? I know, right? We're going back to VCR.
Yeah, we are.
Do you even know what a VCR is, guys? So anyway, he would come home and there would be like all these Charles Bronson and like Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee films, right? So I love Bruce Lee. Still do. Love
history,
Kung Fu,
man.
Right? It's history, man.
That's
it's
nostalgia,
history,
bud.
Right?
Yeah.
Love nostalgia. So anyway, but we were happy, and that's the thing, right? So, but what happens is I end up getting really sick when I was a kid. So my parents, and I brought this in so that you knew just kind of what our struggle was, right? And for the longest time, I thought, wow, we grew up and we received government assistance.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
That wasn't the case.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case. I was talking to my mom about it just 2 years ago. Now, I'll be 36 in April. 2 years ago, I was talking to my mom about it, and I found out that we didn't get food stamps and welfare. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we didn't get these things because we made $14 a month more than we were allowed to receive any kind of assistance. $14, right? So my dad was told, cut your hours back.
Well, back in the 1880s, $14 was a lot of money, man.
In the 1880s, it would have been great. Or we're not going to be able to give you any assistance. So what's he do? He starts working more. So because you can't cut back, right?
As a truck driver, right?
As a truck driver. So instead of working 12 hours a day, he's now working 16.
Right.
And then my mom picks up a job as a waitress, and minimum wage I think at that point was what?
This sounds like
$2-3 an hour.
The cliche 80s, poor story.
It does, right? And it's true though.
I just think of think of the movie like Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone.
Dude, that's one of my favorite movies. Love that movie.
I think like maybe 10 states out of the whole country get that movie like Over the Top,
They do. They only about 10, right?
Yeah, exactly. But mainly South, East, and that's it. Yeah.
It is.
But it spoke to a lot of people that lived in that kind of lifestyle.
Yes, but the most impoverished regions of the U.S., is right in the Appalachian region.
I'm sure. Absolutely. They have a lot of, from what I hear, hunger issues.
They do.
Food issues.
Hunger, healthcare, academics, industry. It's all an issue. And, you know, there's so much talent that comes from there.
Yeah.
From the Appalachian region in general, with music and acting and just all kinds of things that you would think a lot more money would come back into it.
Right.
But it just doesn't. I mean, it is what it is.
So you've kind of painted a picture for us where in your childhood, like you're taking. And I still think it's a different century. It's more like 19th and 20th.
I know, right?
I mean, that's the feeling I get. But you painted this great picture. But you go to the transition as far as what the medical condition or whatever kind of childhood illness that you had.
You got it. So when I was 3 years old, I started getting sick when I was a kid. At 3 years old, I had developed a hemorrhaging disorder. And it's known as Henoch-Schonlein purpura.
Can you say that 10 times fast?
Henoch-Schonlein purpura. Henoch-Schonlein purpura.
No, don't. 3 times. Fucking
bro, I was about to do it like
I can tell, man. You're good.
I got this. I nailed this down, right?
You can take over for the show if you want, man. You got.
Wow, if nursing doesn't work out,
joking.
I've got to. Oh, man. Look, I just got hired and fired at the same time. I'm going to contact my lawyer after this.
Say the illness again.
Henoch-Schonlein purpura.
Okay.
A lot of people call it HSP.
Okay.
And what it actually is now when I got it back in the 80s, it was super rare, right? And even still today, it only hits like 1 in every 200,000 Americans.
Wow.
And it's usually a childhood disorder. There's no known etiology from it. A lot of people have attributed it to receiving the measles vaccination, things like that. So obviously, I didn't have the vaccinations growing up after the age of 3, and I think, you know, you have all these boosters and stuff.
Gotcha.
I didn't get any of them because they didn't know what caused it.
Right.
And so typically it only lasts for days to weeks, unless it starts to attack your vital organs. And in that situation, you have to bring in...
So it's more of an acute illness?
It is.
Okay, so it lasts for several days to weeks.
Yes, and a lot of children today will, well, I won't say a lot. It's still very rare. 1 in every 200,000 will get it, but then they treat it with steroids.
That's extremely rare.
It's extremely rare. But they don't know what causes it is the reason why it's so rare, right?
Got it.
If we could nail down the etiology, we would kind of have a better understanding of what causes it and just avoid it. So when I don't have a lot of memory, so I'm going to go off a lot of the stories that I've heard.
Sure.
Because I was so young. But back in the 80s, when it was affecting me, there was a lot less known about it, right? So we brought everybody on board. When I was 3, it started attacking my bowels, which is the first thing that it kind of attacked. And I remember the stories from my aunt and my uncle, my Aunt Ida and my Uncle Raymond spent a lot of time with me. My Uncle Raymond is no longer with us, but they spent a lot of time with me when I was a kid.
Gotcha.
As well as my parents and my granny and a lot of the family.
Right.
So you have to say that, you know, I'm sick. There's 4 more of my siblings that are dealing with this as well, right? So it's a familial thing when you have a sibling or a child that's sick. And so at 3 years old, it hits my bowels. I'm in the hospital for a big majority of the time. I think I was 30 straight days at 3. Just bleeding and blood transfusions. Like I think it was 23 diapers full of blood in 48 minutes is kind of what happened. And I was just lifeless. Like my body was pale. I wasn't talking. My organs were shutting down. And the doctors were like, look, you know, he's just not going to survive. There's nothing that we can do. So
did you go into mods kind of, or did you go any kind of like dialysis?
Nothing, right? So, because at this point it's my bowels.
Just bowels only right now.
And it's all bleeding, right? But I remember before going into the hospital that I was super swelled, right? Because swelling is a big side effect to Henoch-Schonlein purpura. And we'll just call it HSP. But I went in and it was just, you know, I think it was 3.5 pints of blood is what I received.
Okay.
And the doctors are like, there's not much we can do for him. Right? Clinically.
Because right back then they didn't really know. Right.
And clinically everything's failing. I've been on steroids and stuff. So my Granny Richie, her name is Millie.
Granny Richie,
I know,
man.
love her. She's so great. She, along with my grandma Belcher in Indiana.
She eat frog legs too?
They all eat frog legs.
Yeah,
man.
I figured that. It's in the family, dude.
It's frog legs, man. It's like we got like family recipes.
I was about to say family recipe. Yeah.
And so my granny, like my parents rush in and all this stuff to try to be at my side, and my granny, at least from the stories.
Chisel and Stone, your family recipes, by the way.
Oh, yeah. You'll never know the secret recipe. So my granny, instead of coming in to see me, she drops to her knees in the waiting room and just starts pleading to God and just praying. And in a matter of minutes, blood transfusion took, H&H was coming up, you know what I mean? Whatever it was. I mean, the life was coming back into my body. Now, granted, it took a few hours to test the H&H and yada, 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 but if you want to really get into the whole time frame. But in a matter of minutes, figuratively speaking, I bounced back, right? And so then the doctor, my world-renowned nephrologist, Dr. Stafford, because he said, look, it's affecting his kidneys. We don't know how serious this is going to be. He's out of the woodwork now, right? Right. Make it worse. So he went on, and I went home, and then we battled this for the next 3 years. Sure enough, at 6 years old, it hit my kidneys, and at 5 years old, I was about 210 or 20 pounds, pure fluid. I'm talking like, when in nursing we say 1 to 4 plus pitting edema.
A lot of times, right?
Right. Obviously, I was at 4 plus.
Right.
If we could go much higher than that, we would, because you could grab my arm and it would dent in for hours, right? I swelled so fast that my granny would have to cut the clothes off of me, and she would sit at a sewing machine and she would sew me something else to wear just so that I could maintain my dignity as a kid, right? And I'm thinking, why not throw a cover over me, right? But anyway, she would sew me these shorts and all kinds of stuff to wear. So God love her, she was so great. Good memories. Thank you, by the way. You're bringing a lot back to me right now. But
told you, got the tissues ready for you.
I know, right? I'm going to need them. I was thinking, wow, what's up? But so we went through a lot of that, and my parents, so the reason I mentioned all of the struggles we had financially in the beginning is because now, on top of these struggles, you have a child who's dying. I'm part of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, right? They give us a wish, and just we're going on and on and on because they knew that I was terminal.
Right.
As I'm getting a little older, the disease is not as bad as it was, and at 6 years old, my granny was praying again, and she said, "Look, claim his healing, claim his victory, and it will be so." And a lot of people may give me some flack back for this because, it is what it is. But, my religious upbringing is why I say this, and I'll always say this. I believe without a doubt I was healed of that kidney disorder. And my nephrologist at the time says it was divine as well, that clinically there was nothing else they could do, that something had to have intervened. But today they'll tell you, I just ran its course or whatever the case may be. But I know that I stopped every medication I was on and everything else because my granny believed wholeheartedly that if you claim the victory over that healing, then you have to say that you don't need these medications, and you don't need this, and you don't need that. And that's a very strict way to live, and I'm not telling people to do that. That's just how my granny believed and what my mom believed when we were growing up, so that's what they did. And I'm just throwing that out there for the radio world. So that I'm not trying to tell you to do something or give medical advice. But anyway, for me and in my lifestyle and my life, that's what happened. And I've never been sick since. Kidneys are perfect. Body is perfect. I'm healed completely, and there's no trace of anything ever, even from the damage that could have been done from the renal failure and the bleeding and the hemorrhaging and all that other stuff. So just to kind of give you kind of the heads up, they had to sell things to pay our doctor's bills because we didn't get that government assistance. They had to do all this stuff.
$14, man.
I know, right?
$14.
And so what it did, though, is I feel like it pulled us a lot closer as a family.
Yeah. It's funny because, not really funny, but I mean, is sometimes those kind of incidents in life either break or bring people close together.
They do.
And you're saying for yourself, it was more of a cohesive.
I think so, yes. It kind of, everyone knows kind of how sick I was. Don't get me wrong. Growing up, you're just like, I got a lot of attention. So my brothers and sisters would be like, oh, you're jealous. The favorite, or something like that, which isn't necessarily the case. Looking back on it, I can kind of see their point of view because they couldn't, their mentality at the time couldn't fathom what's going on with their brother, right?
Right.
So when everyone was making over me or trying to, I don't know, bring me gifts or be there for me, it was because they knew I was dying. Right?
How long from first being diagnosed to when you got better, how long of a time frame was that for you?
So I think the first diagnosis came when I was 2 or 3. I believe without a doubt I was healed at 6 years old. However, the doctor said 13 would be a very long life for me because of the kidney failure and the hemorrhaging and the effects that it had on the other organs, the lungs and things like that. Because, everything kind of compensates.
Right.
When something starts to shut down in the body, I think the body is the perfect design for a computer if we could just kind of figure out what's going on.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so up until 13, I think they kind of really followed it. And then after that for a while, because, they didn't filter blood back in the 80s like they do now.
Mm-hmm.
So the risk of hepatitis and HIV and everything was so great.
Right.
Back when I received those blood transfusions that, I had several tests over the years to make sure that I was HIV negative and things like that because of the healthcare that I received.
Right.
But I think that I guess the duration was up until right around 13 to 15, and we just kind of stopped worrying about doctors and stopped worrying about the illness.
And here you are now.
Here I am now.
Breathing fine.
Hey, kicking like a chicken, man.
That's it, man.
I'm almost
Kicking
36.
like a
kicking
chicken.
like a chicken, baby. That's right.
So like from your experience, okay, going back, okay, you've been in the hospital. I mean, you say you have, I don't know if you, I guess at 5 years old, your memories are a little foggy.
They are, but I remember.
Pictures, you remember certain things, right?
I do, and I remember how well the nurses and the doctors kind of sat down and they talked to me, and I feel like, and here I am kind of leading into something else, but I feel like we've lost sight in healthcare today.
More detached from the patient.
Yes, yeah, because it's so task oriented in many ways, right?
It is.
There are, and don't get me wrong now. And we'll talk about that in just a minute from the beginning of my nursing career to where we are now. But things have changed over the last 5 years that I've been a nurse, and May will make 5 years. So much that I've seen such a huge change, right?
Right.
But even more so as a patient, from being on the patient side, when you're having to push that call bell and you're laying in that bed, even as a child, we forget sometimes how much of an impact we have to take the few minutes it's going to take to sit and to laugh or to sit and to smile with that patient, regardless of whether it's a child, a dying family member, or a visitor for a patient, because those are also our patients, right?
Yeah, they are, because they're part of the formula that goes into patient care.
They truly are.
And you kind of beat me to it because I wanted to lead actually to. You're great, because I'm like you're just leading the way. But
do I have a job yet?
We'll keep talking, buddy. We'll see. No, but more of how has your experience as a child going through HSP? Is that correct? Or what was the name?
HSP was Henoch-Schonlein purpura. Yes.
Okay, sure. Whatever that's called.
Whatever it's called, right? HSP, we're good.
All right. So how has that experience of HSP shaped your experience now with patient care? Dealing with patients, how is that experience from childhood?
Okay, that's a good question. I can answer that. So I'm a firm believer that we are a product of experiences, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm just going to make this one little statement. My psychology class a few years ago, I had my instructor, they asked me, they said, we need you to write a paper. And this paper is simply your obituary.
Ooh.
And what life would be like if you would have never existed. And I was like,
that's pretty deep.
That's really deep. This is my favorite assignment ever.
And this is when?
This was back, I was doing that was just part of my associates in arts.
Oh, okay. This is in college.
Yes,
right?
in college.
And
I
just want to make sure it wasn't like in middle school. That's so messed up, man.
No, I know, right? Well, my middle school was my best paper ever.
I just don't know how things were in the 1880s, but go ahead.
I know, right? In the 1880s, right?
You never know.
I should have been like president or something. I don't know. Maybe I invented electricity, right?
Yeah.
Not really. But anyway, the assignment was just simply to write the paper of what life would be like without your existence. And I was so stoked for this paper. But I feel like I used to be much smarter than I am now. Anyway, on the day it was due, I didn't put any work into this paper. I didn't research anything. I didn't write anything. I didn't even put the title or my name on the paper. And I turned in a blank piece of paper on the day it was due.
Right.
And my psychology instructor said, in front of the whole class, "Is this a joke, Shane?"
Right.
And I was like, "No, sir. It's 100% my work, and it's all original based on the homework assignment you gave us." And he goes, "You haven't written anything." And I was like, "I understand. But in order to write anything on that paper, it's going to come from the experiences I've already had on this earth. And to write that paper truly of how it would be without my existence, it is simply that."
It's a really great way to BS your way out of it.
I got an A on that paper.
Yeah.
He said,
sorry. If I was your teacher, I would have handed it back to you. I was like, screw that, man.
No, he's like, "No, you better write." No, but for real though, I got an A on that paper.
Yeah.
But the issue
paper.
was I had the blank paper, but I had to explain
Your reasoning for it.
The reasoning for that to him and the class, which turned it into more of a public speaking issue.
That's good.
Right. And I'm not really big on public speaking. I get really embarrassed if you can't tell. But yeah, I mean, I got an A on that. And so the whole reason for that assignment, right, was everyone in that class wrote their paper based on what they've experienced in life, what they thought things would be like, but also based on what they experienced. So that's why I say everything in your life that you experience is going to make you who you are and give you the ideas and things like that you have. And some people think outside the box. That's neither here nor there. I'm just saying, in general. Growing up, having that illness played a big part of where I am now, only because I could see both spectrums of being a patient as well as being
crazy, man.
Being a nurse.
How it comes full circle.
It does, and everything in life does. But I would tell you one of my fondest memories came from, and this is the reason why everyone should take note. I don't care what color your scrubs are. I don't care if you're a doctor, a patient care tech, a nurse aide, a nurse, or environmental services specialist, okay? If you're in that hospital and you're in and out of those patients' rooms, regardless of what you're wearing, those patients don't see what your title is. They just see that a person is in and out of their room, regardless of where you are. I'm just saying, if you're in scrubs or not in a hospital, make that difference, make that connection. And it's super important because Johnny, and I wish I could find her. I'm not sure if she's still around or not, but she was someone who came in and she would play Candyland and that little fishing game where the fish would pop up and bite.
I remember that thing.
That's
old school, man. Yeah.
Yes, that's so old school, right?
Yeah.
She would come.
It was almost like Hungry Hippos, the fish, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So she would come in and we would play these games. And so there was one game in particular where we bet a Coke, right? And we bet a Coke that I was going to win on Candyland, and I lost. And I ordered a Coke. She came in every day that I was in that hospital, and she talked to me. And one of the patients beside me was a small kid. He brought me his flowers when he was discharged, and because they expected me to die and they expected him to live. And so he brought me every balloon, every flower, every teddy bear he had. And I'm 5 years old. And me and this kid were just such good friends in the hospital the whole time we were there. Anyway, he ended up passing away a month later.
Oof.
So that was very difficult for me as a kid,
Right.
And so, but anyway, I've always remembered the impact that had from that patient, as well as Johnny, the environmental specialist person that came in, EVS. She came in and she mopped the floors and cleaned the room every day, and she would play those games with me, even though it took time away from her job. And let me tell you, 15 years later, I was in my 20s, 20, 21 years old. I went back to that hospital and I tried to track her down. I tried to track her down for probably 3 years just to give her that Coke and remind her of who I was, to let her know the impact that she had. And I never could find her. So, Johnny, if you're listening and you remember Shane Ritchie, I'm just throwing it out there.
Hopefully our audience can find her for you.
I know. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Like, yeah, that'd be amazing.
I would just love to be able to share my story and just kind of what the impact.
Do you know which hospital or what location?
It was UK Children's Hospital. Okay. I spent a lot of time there and also in St. Joe Hospital.
What year,
it was back in the 80s. I'd have to do some research to know. I probably should have had those numbers, but
that's okay. Yeah.
But yeah, it was just. But the point is the impact that we have, right? Regardless of where we are, and a lot of times we forget that in the hospitals is if you're in and out of a patient's room, regardless of what your title is, you're there, right? They see you there, and just as simply as saying hi and smiling to somebody can make their day better, because you never know just how sick someone is or what they're dealing with. And so, growing up as a patient. Nursing wasn't something I wanted to do. Right. I never thought about it. It just wasn't, I got up and I kind of did my own thing and I was always, smart and always focused on my education, things like that. But as I got a little older, I went to work and I always kind of helped my parents pay their bills. We bounced around all the way up until even I was married 10 years ago, from place to place sometimes. My parents were great parents. They raised us right. They always gave us love. And kind of taught us the right way, but they just financially struggled, right? And the lesson to take from there is that I'm the first person in my family that went to and finished college, and now my wife and I are both furthering our degrees to become nurse practitioners, and that'll hopefully take effect in the next 3 years.
So is that where you're going with nursing now? So you're a travel nurse now, but I guess the next step for you would be a nurse practitioner.
Yes, that'll be where we're going. So. The thing about travel nursing with us is we got into nursing simply because we thought, wow, the money is just so much different. When I first became a nurse, and it's always about helping people, so I don't want to lose that in translation here. I don't want you to think
Absolutely.
that I'm kind of driving that nursing is all about the money, because it's really difficult work.
If it's all about the money for you, you're going to get burned out.
You're going to burn out so fast.
If it's not who you are, there's a lot of burnout, and some of that I understand the burnout.
Yes,
right. Like, I mean, burnout is a real issue in nursing, or not. I don't want to say nursing. I mean, I just saw an article recently about how they wanted to increase hours in residency.
Yeah,
or residence. It's like, we're not robots.
We're not.
I mean, this includes everyone. So, but I think that honestly, you can really get burnt out easily in this job, and if you're using money as the only reason to be in it, then you're in it for the wrong reason.
Right, and you're going to make a mistake. That's the thing about it. If you're in this business just for the money, you're not going to be so invested into the illness or the patient care that you pick up on that sign that could be the difference between that patient becoming critical or remaining stable. And as nurses, you spend 12 hours a day with these patients. And I'm not taking anything away from doctors, but, they don't spend 12 hours a day. They spend 12 minutes, 20 minutes. If they've spent 30 minutes to an hour with a patient on a typical day because of all the patients they have to see, then that is a doctor who's going above and beyond for that one patient, because most of your doctors are hospitalists or specialists, right? And they're seeing multiple patients. So they don't have the time to sit down. And I don't want to take this away because, patients, a lot of complaints from patients are that the doctors aren't personable enough, but
they're so spread out thin, though.
They are.
The thing is, they might have that one patient that's really difficult to work with, and they're spending all their resources on that one patient. And yet the patient that really wants that bedside manner, like that more face-to-face, like the interaction that you had with the environmental services, with Johnny.
Yes.
Like that kind of interaction, makes memories and stuff.
It does.
But doctors are taken away from that.
And they don't, and like, I guess personally, I feel like, don't get me wrong, it'd be cool to sit down and just kind of, shoot the breeze with your doctor, but come in, tell me what's going on, do it in a way that I can maintain my dignity, right? Don't just drop a bomb on me, but kind of talk to me about it. If you, and kind of gauge the situation. Some doctors can walk in and some patients can handle that straight up ball drop. This is the way it is and leave. And other patients need that kind of,
Absolutely.
You need to be walked into that, right? But as nurses, we're on that front line, right? And it's our job, I feel like, to communicate that to our doctors. If we are there with that patient for the first 5 hours of our shift, and we know that they need to be coaxed into understanding what's going on, we should relay that to our doctors, who can then spend the time. So I think that as nurses, we sometimes forget that too, and that a big part of our job is communication and laughter and just kind of hanging out.
It all comes full circle.
And with nursing, we're so task oriented now in many, many ways. That we don't have the time for that, or we lose time. So as nurses, if you're confident in your skills and you're not just chasing the paycheck, you will find time, 90% of the time, to do what's needed to be done, to sit there and just to have that conversation. Because I think research has shown, and I don't want to give any false statistics here, so I won't, but that the nurse that sits down, actually physically sits down in a chair for 5 minutes and talks with a patient. This was one of the things I was doing in one of my classes here for advancing my career. The 5 minutes that a nurse spends sitting down talking to a patient made that patient feel like they spent more time with their nurse than the nurse who stood for 10 to 15 minutes and talked to that same patient.
See, I thought with the research that you're about to point out was that frog legs cure HSP.
I wish. But I mean, so I know I went super serious here for all you podcast listeners. Yeah.
No, it's great because I think a lot of people are going to be like, duh. Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't mean in a bad way. I mean,
no, and they should.
Like, they feel this. Like,
they're going to feel like, but here's the thing, of all the people that are saying, duh, obviously this is how we should be. How many of you are actually doing it?
Right.
Because that's the difference. Because I work with a lot of nurses. Now, when I first became a nurse, I went to school in West Virginia. Can I give a shout out to my college?
Absolutely. Well, no.
No.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead.
It might be. Are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead. Go
All
ahead.
right. You can cut it if you can't use it.
I'll cut it out. I'll actually just probably put my college over your voice.
Oh, I love it. It's going to be like, anyway, Davis and Elkins College. Excellent education.
Know. Yeah, go ahead.
You don't know.
Yeah.
Private college, super.
I thought you were about to say West Virginia. I was like, get
it
out
wasn't
of here.
West Virginia.
Yeah.
But it wasn't WVU.
Gotcha.
But no, I mean, I had a great education. I met a lot of great people that I'm still friends with now. And I didn't always want to be a nurse. Now, I bounced around. Don't get me wrong. I had my share of growing up, and, you're drinking, you're kind of racing and doing the crazy stuff that you do. We got into some street racing, and we had so much fun when I was growing up. But had a lot of close buddies of mine. They ended up, passing away from whatever reason for accidents and stuff.
Right.
Somebody like a brother to me. While we were out, we were doing things and stuff, and it was a different time. But he ended up passing away. And it's still hard for me to deal with that. But me and his brother are still best friends today. Really close friends. And but anyway, sorry, I'm kind of getting off on a tangent. We grew up, and we did our crazy stuff. We had the spill, but I've always been kind of settled. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have an education. I want to have something better in life because we grew up so poor, and I knew that I was going to help my parents with their bills and things like that. So nursing just kind of seemed to fit because my Aunt Ida, and I'm going to throw her name out there, I watched her make a lot of money over the years in travel nursing. And many people, even today, which is astounding to me, don't really understand that travel nursing exists. They don't have any idea what it is. You almost have to kind of explain it, which I will in just a second. But I remember, I'm going to share this story with you. My brother worked at a mattress making factory. He spent an entire week, I'm talking 6 days, working 12 hours a day, and I think he cleared, after taxes, like $780 that week, right? I know I probably shouldn't throw numbers out. And so anyway, made like $780, and she looked at me, she goes, wow, that's really good money. I made that today. And I thought, oh my gosh, from travel nursing, right? And so I bounced around from the railroad to the Bank of America, working in management for them for a few years, to finally deciding, hey, because my wife was relentless about me going back to school, go back to school. So in 2010, I went back to nursing school, graduated in 2012, and started working at a small hospital in West Virginia. $19 an hour, no patient ratios.
That's crazy.
So every night I had 9 to 10 patients on a med-surg tele unit, and the patients range from pediatrics to geriatrics.
Yeah, that's insane.
It's nuts. But it gave me such a foundation and such an understanding of how to delegate and how to prioritize that I believe that it made me the nurse, partly made me the nurse that I am today, right?
It also makes you appreciate the times where you go to different states and they have patient ratios.
It does.
Or, sometimes certain states don't have patient ratios, but they still have the patient ratio. It's just not legal,
Right.
You know what I mean? But they have a different system that you can actually work in, and you don't feel...
You don't feel overwhelmed.
You don't feel overwhelmed. You feel like you could actually take care of the patient.
Yes.
And you're not like running. There's a lot of tasks that get lost.
There are.
And that's something that really needs to be brought up with a lot of these like certain, I don't know if it's counties, states, or...
It's statewide. It is statewide for ratios. And I'm a firm believer in patient ratios because you're going to have a more competitive wage, right? Mm-hmm. Or you're going to at least feel like what you're getting paid fits what you're working. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotcha.
And so when we were there, I mean, like, it was a hard experience. But after 10 months, I began travel nursing, and I've never looked back. And I went in when I first went in for my job when I graduated nursing school. I walked into the manager's office and I said, "Hey, I'm here for an interview." And she said, "I don't have an interview scheduled today." And I'm like, "But you do now."
You do now, yeah.
I said, "My name is Shane Ritchie, and I'd love to have a job at your hospital." And I sat down and I just kind of gave her the spiel when I was graduating, that I'd be taking my NCLEX in like 3 weeks, yada, yada, yada. And she said, "Well, Shane, it's a pleasure to meet you."
It's like I take baths in 50-gallon barrels. My granny Richie, hooked me up with some frog legs. I'm good.
That's it. And she said, "Come back next week for a formal interview."
That's how I got my interview as well. I created my own interview.
That's good.
That's the way to do it, man.
I got hired, man. And 10 months later, I told her, I said, "I'm ready to leave." And she said, "Well, you promised me you would only give me a year, and you gave me 10 months, so thank you. You've always got a job here if you come back."
That's awesome, man.
It's pretty amazing.
Well, I greatly appreciate you coming to NSR today.
You're welcome.
Dude, you're always welcome back.
You got it, man.
You're always, come on, man.
All right. I think I got one more session for you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, you're always welcome back. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening to NSR, National Scrubs Radio. This was Shane Ritchie. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to NSR, National Scrubs Radio, with your host, Derek J. For more great content and to stay up to date, visit Facebook and Twitter @NatScrubsRadio. We'll catch you next time.